Football Manager 2026 has to be perfect, or it could spell real trouble for the franchise, for Sports Interactive, for the future of this game that we all know and love. And it's not just me saying it, that seems to be the general consensus from Twitter, YouTube comments, Reddit. Apparently there's this fancy new website called TikTok that the young people are using. And they all seem to agree. If it's not a masterpiece, how on earth did they spend 2 years on it? And where do we go from there? Let me know down in the comments what you think. And if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, turn your notifications on, leave a thumbs up, and let's get on with having a little bit of a chat, shall we? Because obviously Football Manager 2025 was cancelled. Sorry if that's breaking news. There are 1 or 2 videos on the channel where I already discussed that, so shouldn't have been too much of a surprise. But FM25 was cancelled after previously being billed by Sports Interactive as the biggest step forward for the franchise in 2 decades. We were told to expect the transfer over to the Unity engine, new graphics, an improved UI, the Premier League license, women's football. Expectations were super, super high. But then it wasn't ready in time, it got cancelled, and we've heard nothing since. But if the expectations were high for last year, if anything, they're surely only getting higher. Now Sports Interactive have had 2 years to develop this game rather than the usual 1 year cycle, which at the time of recording still hasn't actually been formally announced. But this next release, which I'm assuming is FM26, and I'm assuming is out in autumn, it's not just the latest version of Football Manager. I actually am starting to begin to think that it's Football Manager's, or at least Sports Interactive's, future on the line with this upcoming release. Because if they get it wrong, I'm not sure how much more patience their paymasters at Sega are going to have. We've already seen Sega dabbling with alternate football management games in a video I made a couple of weeks ago. So what are fans expecting from FM26 when it finally releases? I think number one is we want at least a Football Manager version of next-gen graphics. And I'm not talking about PS5 EAFC level of graphics, but I think there is an expectation that however it looks, it actually looks like a modern video game. And although we're not talking about it matching up with EAFC 2025, 2026, whatever it might be, I think there's a number of people out there thinking, yeah, but maybe FIFA 18, FIFA 19 level, which was still way ahead of what I think Football Manager is ever capable of getting to. Maybe I'm proved wrong, but I think there is an expectation this is going to look like a modern console football game. Now, that expectation might be a bit high, and it worries me that Sports Interactive aren't managing that expectation. I think a lot of good could come from them sharing a few screenshots, sharing some match engine footage. They could heavily choreograph that to make sure it isn't clunky, but just show people what level of graphical fidelity we're expecting, so they're not expecting it to look like FIFA. I think it's something they need to do sooner rather than later. But even if it isn't looking graphically like a modern FIFA game, for example, I think as a minimum expectation, as Football Manager, we're looking for better animations, better player models, better crowds, better stadiums, better environments around the stadiums. There shouldn't be any more of these PS2 era flat textures and players kind of running through each other and weird goalkeeper animations. That stuff should all be long gone. I don't mind if graphically the pixels, I don't mind if they basically look the same as FM24, but they need to animate and move like, I was going to say real people, but realer people. And certainly the pitches, the weather effects, the fans, all of that needs a massive overhaul. But on top of the match engine graphic stuff, we already know they're working on a modern UI, UX, which user interface, user experience, I think is what they are. Because navigating FM24 can still feel a little bit like moving around Excel in 2009. And I think we have seen from the few screenshots that were released last year as part of the FM25 build, a few bits that have appeared on Steam. They are definitely going down the route of having a more modern user interface, one that can work across PC, console, handheld, mobile, with smoother menus. and hopefully still maintaining the customization and skinning options we've had previously. But it needs to feel different in every aspect of the game, not just when you're watching a match happen. It needs to feel different and new in the menus. Where we spend the bulk of our time playing Football Manager, surely more than half of the time spent playing FM is spent not in a match. So the user interface needs just as much time and polish applying to it as the match engine side of the game. To the point where I think Sports Interactive, by staying so quiet for so long and taking as long as they've had, I think they genuinely have to wow us, both visually, in terms of every aspect of the game needs to look like a modern game, but also in terms of practicality and usability. The menus have to be at least as easy to use and at least as intuitive as they are now, but they need to be different. They need to work across platform. And arguably, you want them to improve on where we are now. We want it to be more intuitive, quicker to navigate, less clicks to get the same amount of stuff done. Because I think, based on the long wait that we've had and also the marketing that was already existing for FM25 before it was cancelled, I think we have been led to expect a revolution, like proper innovation, not just another annual release, another iteration on the formula that already works. FM24 was even billed as the most complete version of that version of Football Manager that they'd ever made. It was 20 years of iteration, of gradual improvement, slight change, which is fancy marketing speak for FM24 was just a bunch of recycled features from older games, polished up a little bit. That's not going to cut it on FM26. For FM26, they need to show that they've used this extended development cycle well. It needs to be clear that it's not just been 2 years of frantically putting out fires and trying to get the thing working. They've actually had 2 years of improvement and innovation go into the game as well. It's not going to be enough to just be as good as FM24 or to catch up to where we feel they should be. This game needs to be a huge leap forward in all aspects for the Football Manager franchise. And I mean, we don't know what features they're planning on including. A lot of people are assuming it's just going to be the game that would have been FM25. I choose to believe that not the whole team at Sports Interactive has been fixing broken stuff for the last year. And I would like to think there's going to be features that maybe we weren't already expecting for FM25. I mean, the list of things fans want is as long as your arm, but some of the things I would like to think could be included in an ideal world. And again, if anyone from Sports Interactive is watching, I wouldn't have to speculate on stuff like this if you communicated with us a little bit and let us know what to expect. But because we don't have that communication and that transparency, I'll speculate. So some of the things I would like to see, and I think it's conceivable we could see if the efforts have been directed in the right way. A proper online mode would be great. I don't know what it would look like, but just one that works properly. Drop in, drop out, dedicated servers, online, native, both competitive and co-op would be incredible and not unachievable. I mean, we've seen it just in the last year, Football Manager try and position itself as an esport with the FIFA World Cup that I was very lucky to be part of the broadcast team for. We've had that big esports tournament. So you would like to think in the year that's happened since then, they would want to lean in to be able to do more stuff like that. Would also like to see an overhaul of press conferences. I seem to talk about this a lot, but I've been sending my assistant to these for at least 5 years. I would like to have a reason to go to a press conference myself. A new question here and there. Some interesting answers that I wasn't expecting every now and then would be incredible. And maybe just not a sea of empty seats in front of me when I go into the press conference room would be something of a step forward. Some kind of smarter AI within the game. I'm not expecting all singing, all dancing, chat GPT player interactions, but if we could have elements of the game reacting dynamically and maybe learning as part of a save file, I think that's where the game has got to go. And I'd like to see them starting to step towards that now. So rival managers who adapt to the way you're playing, so you have to adapt back again, would be huge. Logical player interactions would be incredible. We'd like to see club cultures that actually evolve and change. Rivalries that develop dynamically, properly, more logical favoured personnel, icons, legends lists. If you spend 15 years building the best youth academy in the game, that should become ingrained within that football club. So if you then do your 5 years in the future where you've simmed forward to see what happens after you leave, they shouldn't have sold all the kids and replaced them with journeymen. They should maintain the culture that you've established, because it's what you've established. It's what the club has become about. Dynamic league reputations, dynamic club reputations. Make it so Build a Nation stuff actually works. And just for me personally, maybe bring back some of those scenarios that used to be in FM Touch, but haven't really existed since FM Touch hasn't existed. I'd love to be able to do a few of them as YouTube videos, and I'm sure people would enjoy playing them. So I've obviously given quite a long list of things that it would be nice to see in FM26 there. But what happens if they don't deliver that? What happens if they do put a game out that just works, that isn't really as good as FM24? They're like the doomsday scenario. They're the worst possible outcome. It's still a little bit buggy. It doesn't really work, but hey, it's in the new engine and things can only get better from here. What happens if that's the game we get for FM26? I think it's at that point that we do risk long-time fans maybe walking away. And this is something I see in my YouTube comments more and more. Having this year off, there are people like me who've been playing this game for 20, 30 years who have got bored of FM24. And they've now had a year where their annual habit of, oh, it's autumn, I'll get the new Football Manager game and I'll play it relentlessly for 6 months. They had a year off. It's going to be, if they come back after their year off and it's not an enjoyable experience, they might drop the game again 2 or 3 weeks in because it's not what they were expecting. And at that point, it's 2 years off of their normal way of doing things. And they then start to become users you are going to struggle to get back because they've found other things to do in their lives. Football Manager is not like a typical video game. So many Football Manager players don't play other games. They're Football Manager players. They're not gamers. And if you give them a multiple year period where Football Manager isn't a viable option for them because it didn't exist and then it was rubbish, they'll find new things to do with their time and they might not come back. The same goes to the casual players. Obviously, we're in the middle of a big push out to mobile, console, things like Xbox Game Pass and Apple Arcade and Netflix. They bring in an enormous number of casual players. If those casual players come in, give the game a try and it's not very good, it's a huge uphill battle to convince them to try it again the next year. And also, of course, a bad FM26 release gives their competitors another year. Whether that's internal competition from Sega's own Football Club Champions, or an improved EAFC career mode, or maybe the emergence of an actual competitor to the game. The longer you go without Football Manager being the industry leader, the top dog, the more opportunity you're giving for someone else to come in and take that spot. And I think based on the amount of expectation we've already got going in after the way they built up FM25 and the wait we've had since, I don't think they're going to get a second chance to relaunch this as a game series. It is now or never. FM26 is crucial. And if it's not very good, I was going to say it could be the beginning of the end, but I think the beginning of the end has begun and this is their chance to save themselves. And if they balls it up, it's going to be really, really hard to come back from. So what do I actually think will happen? Do I think Sports Interactive can deliver? I mean, they've got that enormous database, the biggest database in football. That's a massive advantage that they start with. The team there is undoubtedly talented. They've worked with a very small team for a very long time to make a very good video game. And they also have an incredibly loyal fan base, as we've seen by the amount of people who've stuck with it even now with the game not releasing. You've seen the amount of mods that have appeared off the back of the game, updated databases, the thousands upon thousands of people still consuming content 18 months on. There is a loyal and rabid fan base for this game. But as talented as the team at Sports Interactive are, they are building a new game in a new engine that they've never worked in before. They're not experienced in Unity. They are learning it as they go. This is their first game. And not only is it their first game in a completely new development environment, it also needs to be better than their game they were iterating on for 30 years. That is a big ask. Add on to that the fact that their communication has been basically non-existent. We don't know what to expect. Is that because they still, at this point, when I would like to think we're like 3 months away from release now, 3 or 4 months, do they still not know what it's going to be? Is it still not ready? I know they're hiring for QA testers at the moment. I would like to think that's an indication there is a game that's just about ready to test and they're just putting the finishing touches to it. If they're sat here in June and they still don't know if it's going to be the best game ever, if they still don't know what features are going to be in it, that's just setting themselves up for cancellations and delays again, surely. And I think we are reaching the point where we really need to start seeing some screenshots, some footage, some features. We just need something. They can't leave it until August, September time like they normally do, because it just seems insane that you would. I'm still optimistic. I am hopeful, not just because I rely on this game for my job, but I've loved it for 30 years. I want it to succeed. And I think there are a lot of positives that come out of cancelling the game last year. I think we'd be having very different conversations and the sentiment would be a lot worse if they'd have just released some dross last year. The fact they've got previous for not releasing a bad game leads me to believe if it comes, it will be good. Will it be perfect? Will it be a masterpiece? It's difficult to say with no communication. And I also don't think they can afford to delay or cancel again. But I think I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful. I think there is a game coming, or else they wouldn't be hiring for testers. And I hope it's going to be good. And I hope we're all blown away and we look back on these videos and we laugh at how worried we all were. But regardless of any of that stuff, I think we can all probably agree that FM26 is not just another annual release in the ongoing Football Manager cycle. It's a turning point for the entire series, one way or the other. And we just don't know which way it's going to turn yet. 2 years of complete silence only ends up working in their favour if they deliver a great game and can come out and say, this is why we didn't say anything, because we were making this and look how good it is. We're justified in how we've behaved. If they're not able to stand up, chests out, be proud of what they delivered, I'm not sure the community sticks around and waits for FM27. But they're just my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments what you think. What do you think the one thing FM26 must get right is? And do you think Sports Interactive will deliver? If you've enjoyed this video, please make sure you leave a nice big thumbs up on there for me. Subscribe to the channel for daily Football Manager videos. And thank you very much for watching.